I'm not sure I've met this guy before. Do you know who this is? I haven't seen him around. He's a new face, a new young face in politics.
He looks real familiar to me.
There's someone in Canada who looks a bit like this. Is he Canadian?
Are you talking about this stunning hunky man?
Oh, you are a sex god.
Look at that. Does he look like Beavis?
Yeah, a little bit, eh?
A little bit. Libertarian.
All right, let's go. Can't have too many of the funnies tonight, Chewy, because we've got a lot of video to get through. David Seymour is forever talking about dividing by ethnicity, how it's never worked anywhere in the world. One of the things we often say about that is we go, affirmative action? Could we say affirmative action kind of worked? So, maybe there's some, but he says it as a fact, right? And no one ever pushes back until old mate Jack came.
That's the division it's led us to.
So you've said, I think, that dividing people by race and ethnicity and granting them different sets of rights or legal rights has never worked anywhere.
Yep.
What about Sweden?
Silence.
What about Sweden?
Well, the Sami reindeer people have indigenous rights to herd reindeer. They have land rights to Sami parliament. All of that's enshrined in law. Sweden's not yet a failed state.
Well, that may well be true.
Yeah, this is really important to cut in straight away. He says is a failed state. He doesn't say has some issues in the state to work about. Now, a failed state is not a country that's got, 3% discussion difference. A failed state is like a crashing economy, cannot function. Very careful to watch the trick here. He says it's a failed state. Then when he gets pushed back on, he goes, well, I don't think it's good for everybody. So he's saying different things, and it's really good that Jack called him out on it. Parliament, all of that's enshrined in law. Sweden's not yet a failed state.
Well, that may well be true, but I think...
What about Canada?
Silence.
Well, again...
and the US, they have indigenous people have rights enshrined in law. Same with Aboriginal Australians. These aren't failed states.
Well, if you want to talk about Australia, Canada and the United States...
No, I mean, that phrase you've used a few times now, that dividing people by race and ethnicity, granting them different sets of legal rights, has never worked anywhere. I mean, there are 4 countries where it's worked.
Well, actually, I don't believe it has worked. If you want to talk about any of those countries, let's take Canada, for example, one that I happen to know a little bit about the background.
I never knew he'd been to Canada. Did you know he'd been to Canada, Joey? I was never aware of that.
Don't make me get that picture back up.
Let's take Canada, for example, one that I happen to know a little bit about the background. The reason that people believe New Zealand has the best race relations in the world is because we've never done or never dreamed of doing what Canada's done, which is effectively put 1 million people of First Nations ancestry under INAC, or Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, and say you live on a reserve.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is working. That's the interview then.
Yeah.
Put it back in the bag. We're the envy of the world for race relations because of what we've been doing for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think I tweeted something very similar today, Chewy, and I used that thing about failed state. It's like, but New Zealand's not. So, hang on. The way we're doing it now, we haven't fallen over. We haven't, so it's working here. But you say it doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep going. Give them some grace.
Under INAC, or Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, and say you live on a reserve, it's governed by a band council, all of your social services are funded through one government department, and the level of poverty, dysfunction, abuse that occurs on those reserves is absolutely third world. So, the idea...
Third world. This doesn't work third world. He's using an example, but we also spoke about Sweden, third world, or world leading. New Zealand, third world?
The thing is, what Jack has said here is not that all of those countries that were listed are doing a fantastic job, and that this is the pathway of how to treat your indigenous people. North America clearly has problems. Canada is an absolute shit show for how they treat their indigenous people, and they're only starting now to address that. The Sami people had to fight for everything that they've got in Finland and Sweden. So Jack isn't saying here's a list of countries that do it better.
No.
The argument that David Seymour is saying is that it's never worked anywhere ever.
And it causes the state to fail. It causes the state to fail, which clearly it's not.
None of that is true. And then in the same conversation, he says we're the envy of the world for our race relations. And it just made me have a brain hemorrhage where I go, yes, because we've got the treaty, Te Tiriti, and we've got the Waitangi Tribunal, and we've had 50 years of learned discussion about what this document means to us. That's why we're the envy of the world. No one has these things.
Yep. All right, let's keep going.
That somehow an American or Australian or Canadian view. Yeah, but my thing is it doesn't work. The reason that people admire...
Whilst giving examples of it working.
New Zealand is that compared to any of those other 3 Anglo countries, we have taken the view that all New Zealanders have equal rights. That's actually what our treaty says. In the last 50 years, we've started to go down a track that, in my view, makes us much more like Australia, Canada and the United States, where people who are of First Nations or Indigenous or Aboriginal heritage are told, no, you're in a separate basket from other citizens.
They're hardly failed states, though, are they? So why should Parliament...
Just a second, though. The question is for the people who are affected by those policies.
Well, I think many Māori would argue that actually Māori haven't benefited from the status quo in New Zealand right now. Māori are overrepresented in all the bad things, underrepresented in all the good stats in New Zealand.
Yeah, but
very quickly,
though. No, you're missing the point here. The point is there are 2 basic ways to do this. One is to have division, a different set of rights, different sovereignty.
The division that this bill is causing. He says division like if people do separate things in separate areas. If people over 65 can get a pension and people under 65 can't. You know, if the Catholic Church can only hire male priests, no females, discrimination based on sex, that kind of division's okay. He's not challenging that kind of division. So you always got to bring it back to why is he so focused on these race issues when he's happy to see discrimination in other areas of life as well.
He will always mention New Zealand as being divided, like this is the most divided that we've ever been. And then he introduced this bill, and that was shown to be a lie as well.
Yeah.
So if his concern is how divided this country is, why are you dividing it more?
Yeah, and or like you've just said very cleverly, Chewy, when you've looked for an expression of division, say the hikoi, what you saw was unity. I mean, it's even because if it was division, you would have seen a counter protest. Was there one? No. Couple of odd individuals here and there. So that would be division. Like you think about, they always talk about 81 Springbok Tour. There was a protest and there was a counter protest. There was division. They're saying there's division, but we're not seeing division. We might be hearing division if we listen to fucking talkback radio or read the, as you always say, Chewy, what is it, the New Zealand Herald comment section. But when you get the chance to put the rubber where the road is, literally on the road walking, there seems to be complete unity in the way that this country despises in general what they're doing. We'll just get to the end of this. It's got like 30 seconds.
Live under a different jurisdiction in a different location. That is the Australian, Canadian and American model. It's been a disaster. Are there problems in New Zealand? Yes. But our model of saying we have...
Sorry. Just gonna say, he keeps saying these big words. It's been a disaster. It hasn't worked, but he's giving no examples. Remember, is America a failed state? Well, actually, Trump, maybe that's the one, we'll give him that one, but not for the reasons he thinks. Sweden, failed state, no. You know, and he goes, but that's the problem, that's the division. And then he just moves on. Now, Jack does very well through this, but it's a typical Gish Gallop. Everyone knows what a Gish Gallop is, where you give out as many facts and words and stuff as possible that the person interviewing you can only come back to one. So the other 8 things you say they have to leave alone, or it would be a 19-hour video. So he's very good at saying big word, big word, big word, big word, big word, big concept, scary word, scary word, scary word, and Jack gets to come back at one of them. And so those other 19 things get left there for people to understand that. And all the writers go, oh gosh, didn't he take him apart? He didn't answer any of those other things, he said. Yeah, because we don't have a spare 3 days. It's not, was it Nixon who did like a 48-hour interview? Something like that? We don't have the time for that. Sorry, Joe. I'm going to shut up. We'll get to the end of this.
One standard of citizenship, we're all human rights, you all have equal rights. That is vastly superior to what they've done. My argument is the last 50 years we've become more like, not very far, but we've started to go in the direction of division. So and I think we need to go back to New Zealand's true approach, which is equal rights for all.
So why should...
There you go. So that's clip number one. Chewy, I'll give you the last word on that, sir.
No, I'm not going to say anything because we've got a lot to get through, as you said.
Look at you. Holy moly. Who is this? Yeah. This orange man, orange shirt. Oh, orange man. We should see one of those Trump. He'd look good in that orange. Okay. I love this bit. And I know my tongue's in my cheek when I say this, but I think Jack Tay may have been listening to us, Chewy, because he has a fantastic conversation here, which is what we've been talking about this for 18 months, that you could look and can look at the treaty as a contract. This is a libertarian. Do you believe in the sanctity of contracts? That's what he's saying. And this is great. And there is no comeback or no answer for it.
Do you believe in the sanctity of contracts?
Yes, I do, but I also believe that contracts need to be interpreted, especially over 184 years. And you've got to balance that against the rights of people.
Shoom. See that? He went from do you believe in the sanctity of contracts to talking about the treaty. No, I don't have to have my contract with my bank interpreted because I know what it says. It's there. And if I don't know, I could probably go to my accountant who would be an expert who could tell me, right? But contracts don't have to be interpreted. You want to interpret this contract. That's what it is.
To be a thinking and valuing being with equal dignity and equal respect afforded to them in our constitutional arrangements.
But you would agree, if not a partnership between races, you would agree, I think, that the treaty is a binding agreement between iwi hapu and the Crown, right? So how would it be just for one party to an agreement to unilaterally define the meaning of that agreement without the other party's consent?
Well, that's exactly what's been happening over the past 50 years when the courts and the Waitangi...
Nope.
It's just lie after lie after lie.
The courts, the Crown and Māori have all been participants in this conversation. It hasn't been Māori going, we'll just do what we want and ignore the Crown. Nope. It hasn't been happening for 50 years, you fucking liar.
Well, that's exactly what's been happening over the past 50 years when the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal have a very narrow range of...
Respectfully, the courts aren't the Crown, though, are they?
Well, that may be true.
So the courts aren't actually one of those parties that signed the agreement. The Crown signed the agreement with iwi and hapu. Those are the two separate parties to the agreement.
This is a beautiful point, Chewy. You've signed a mortgage and your bank has signed a mortgage. If there is conflict there, you go to an arbitrator who is an independent body. You've signed a contract with your workplace. The workplace has signed it. You have signed it. If there's disagreement with that, you go to a third party, which is an arbitrator. You don't allow your workplace to dictate what it says. This is beautiful. David Seymour is saying one of the signatories of this contract is now going to dictate what it says. That's not how you resolve a contract. It's not how you resolve a contract. You get a third party to arbitrate between you. And the third party in New Zealand is, and always has been, the fucking courts. It's a really good point, and it's a bit of a spin on this today that I think we should all remember.
So the courts are the closest thing we actually have to a neutral arbiter. I mean, it is the responsibility of the courts to resolve conflicts or divisions between the Crown and other parties, which is exactly what they've been doing.
Nonetheless, what they've come up with is a version of the treaty that is completely unworkable with a...
Nonetheless means that might be true, but that's what nonetheless means. And then what he's saying is, nonetheless, that is unhelpful to my narrative. That's what he's just said. In
a liberal democratic state. I mean, we've just seen that. The best examples you can come up with are American, Canadian, and Australian
Sweden,
reserves. Yeah. So, I mean, the examples you came up with are so
back
disastrous.
To that point, though. No. So I mean, I think this is a critical part of this, right? Why should the Parliament, which is the Crown, in your case you are a minister of the Crown, why should a party that has a direct conflict of interest when it comes to the Treaty of Waitangi be the one to ultimately interpret what the treaty means without the consent of the other party?
Well, it's actually the Parliament on behalf of the people of New Zealand. And the problem with...
You're a minister of the Crown, though, right? So you are a concerned party, as opposed to the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal, which are...
Yeah, neutral third party. If you want to get into this three branches of government thing, sure, I'm the executive, and as a minister, I introduce the bill to Parliament. It's the Parliament, which is the elected legislature of New Zealand, that is deciding whether or not it goes forward. Now,
you as a minister of the Crown, define these principles. The Crown is a concerned party when it comes to the Treaty of Waitangi, which is why, in the eyes of some...
Go, Chewy.
He fundamentally doesn't understand this, clearly. He doesn't see that there's a conflict of interest. Like,
or
he just goes up to this point and just misses it every time.
Yeah, no, but respectfully, or he absolutely does, and he's aware of the laziness of media and of people to do the work. I mean, I don't believe that Trump is ignorant to all those things that he says are wrong. I believe there's an element of it that he can say it loudly and confidently, and he knows people will believe it. So you might be right, but I think the equal and opposite, that he knows exactly what he's freaking doing, might be right as well.
Yeah.
Fair?
The other aspect of this is he's talking about, I'm just a simple representative of the people of New Zealand, as we all are in Parliament. Cool. This isn't representative of a large portion of the country. They didn't ask for this. You could go, all right, everybody that voted for ACT wanted this. It's 8%. Like, it is not representative. It is not a representative piece of legislation. And unfortunately, Jack falls for this trap later on as well, of regurgitating the Curia poll that said more people in New Zealand were in support of this legislation than against it. Now, there are huge problems with Curia polls' accuracy and integrity, and it kind of shocked me that he regurgitated that particular poll. So, everything that David says as a surety, like most of the country is for this. It's not backed up.
Yeah,
it's not backed up. And even if it was true, which it is not, or at the very least is debatable, it is also Parliament's role to go, this is a bad piece of law. This is bad for the integrity of this country. Like, if everybody just answered a poll that said, free guns for everyone,
no more tax.
Parliament
no more tax.
No more tax. No tax, and yes, guns. Parliament would be quite within their rights, I think, to go, well, I don't know about that.
Well, I think, Chewy, and we'll keep going in a sec, but I think that what you've said several times, giving you credit for it, is you do not decide issues of, what do we say, race?
Race relations.
Race relations by referendum. That's what it is. Because sometimes the correct thing to do, so this is why the numbers don't really matter, sometimes the correct thing to do is the less popular thing to do. Sometimes the correct thing to do is what you've committed to, and now it's become unpopular with some, you still have to do it. Sometimes the best thing to do is when your representatives previously to you have signed a fucking contract that say you're going to do it. So let's keep going, yeah?
Having courts be the arbiter of this might be more appropriate. I mean, if you think about other contracts, right? If it was like, I appreciate it's different, but a car loan or a mortgage or a custody agreement.
I think Jack's been watching. Oh, look at that. Pause down on me.
I appreciate it's different, but a car loan or a mortgage or a custody agreement, it would be totally unjust for one party to unilaterally decide what that agreement means.
Well, first of all, often those contracts are actually made in the context of the laws of the country at the time. But the second point I made...
It's not what Jack said, by the way. Jack just said if you're getting a car loan, it's not okay for the person giving the loan to then change that's what he said, and Seymour hasn't answered it and won't answer it.
Much more important that actually these treaty principles only exist because Parliament said they exist. It's the treaty principle.
Like any law in this country that we've ever had. Are we now saying we can change everything because they're not really such a big deal? Only Parliament set the speed limit, shall we? We'll just change it. I mean, we should fight it and then change it because that means nothing. It's like such a stupid, unintelligent argument.
That we're talking about defining. So
they exist because the courts said they exist, and then Parliament chose to interpret the court's decision and put that into legislation.
And subsequent to that...
So the courts, which were the independent, neutral third party in this, or as close as we can get to a neutral third party, they were the ones who ultimately defined those treaty principles. The Parliament then decided to take that decision from the courts and put it into legislation.
And subsequent to that, the Parliament put them into legislation and across a whole lot of other statutes, which has affected the life and the rights that people have in this country every day. So you can make the argument all day about contracts and whether the courts are the right arbiter, but what I come back to is the question of whether or not it delivers a constitutional setting that gives equal rights, respect and dignity to each human being in this country. And what they've done clearly hasn't. And when the best example you can come up with of it working anywhere else in the world as, Canadian reserves.
That's your interpretation of the treaty, and we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no, that's the end of that clip. Shall we go for it?
Yeah. That's not what Jack said. Like you heard him say that. The only example you can bring that up is the Canadian reservations. Absolutely misrepresented what Jack said there.
By many of those
Sorry.
Right from the start, Jack was using that as a pushback against the repeated line that David has used in every single interview about this bill. He has parroted the line that no country that has made division based on ethnicity or ancestry, it's never worked anywhere.
Yeah. And he says it, he goes, show me where it's worked. He goes, show me where it's worked. Well, Jack's just showing you. Every time we talk about it, the one thing we often say is, sorry, the name's just jumped out of my head. Race relations in America, affirmative action seems to have worked. You're following that. So, but Chewy, this is the thing. He says it quickly. He says it confidently. He says 20 other things beside it, and he says enough to slip through and then give his minions on social media the ability to think they can push back, and then the people they're pushing back against don't have the details to push back. So it's just like a layer of shit that sits on top of us all the time, and you can't quite press through, or enough people can't quite get through it, that it's just always there. And because there's enough of it, there's enough words, there's enough ideas, there's enough opinions, they can never actually break through the counterspin to it, sorry for the pun, to actually show the truth. There's that old adage about how lies will go around the world before truth gets its pants on. This is basically
it. Look, I think what David's doing is working. It is creating a bit of confusion. Like, yes, he's talking to his faithful that will just parrot these lines. Like I have literally been arguing on YouTube with someone for a week where they're going, point out in David's bill where it's racist with quotation marks, which no, and it's like it's not. There's nothing in the words that is objectively racist, but its intention is. The effect on it will be racist, and these sort of things. But then the other thing that I've seen, and I love this, I saw a great example of it in the New Zealand subreddit today, where someone said, "I'm very confused on this. Can someone please explain to me? I don't get it. All of this stuff sounds great. Equality sounds like something that we should strive for, right? So why are people angry?" And what I saw in that thread was a whole bunch of people take this person at face value and take time and spell out exactly what's going on. And this is what we talk about, is it's really easy to hit that. This is racist and I'm angry and I don't have to explain it why. We're not going to bring people with us if we do that. As frustrating as it is, you spend all of the time, you're either talking to people that agree with you or you're yelling at people that aren't. You need to think about the people that are stuck in the middle. We need to bring them with us with facts, with reason. And David doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
David wants to muddy the waters because that's where he gets his pull from.
Let's go on to the third of four clips, and they're talking about Article 2, and it's a very, very, again, Jack does very well here, trying to get David. I actually felt that David was really weak. Like, I mean, David is a pretty good debater, even if it is high school debate. But Jack here is going to challenge him on what do you think? And he keeps coming back to what it should be. And he goes, no, not should. What do you think? He comes across as very weak in this argument. Like it's never been pushed back on him before. And he's just having to think of these things now. So they talk about Article 2 here.
The point of your opponents, though, is that nowhere in the treaty does it actually guarantee everyone that level of tino rangatiratanga, that it specifically includes a carve-out for iwi and hapu.
Well, it said it would give tino rangatiratanga
or the signatories to the treaty.
All the people of Nutarani, all the people in New Zealand. Now, of course, most people say, oh, well, clearly that meant just the chiefs that were there in 1840.
Right. So I think it means all people.
I think it should mean all the people of New Zealand.
You think it should mean? You think it should mean? But do you think that's what it meant?
Well, the courts like to tell you.
No, what do you think?
Well,
I think it should mean.
But it should mean all the people.
My question is, what do you think it actually meant?
Well, I think it should mean all the people.
Sorry, I'm not asking what you think it should mean. I'm asking what you think it meant.
Well, I suspect, I don't know. Nobody knows for sure. The courts have told us that it meant only Māori. The courts have told us that we now live in a country
Remember from earlier, the courts, that arbitrator who's more neutral than either Māori or the Crown, those people, the ones who are in the middle?
Which is divided by ancestry into two collectives. Okay, and that doesn't work. So here's what it should be.
The line you quoted Te Tiriti there. So ko te kuini o ngā arane ka whakarite ka whakai ki ngā rangatira ki ngā hapu ki ngā tangata katoa o New Tirane, New Zealand, right? Ngā tangata katoa, and you've interpreted that as meaning all New Zealanders.
All the people of New Zealand, yes.
But I mean, you're giving us an English translation of a Māori text there, but of course we don't need the English translation of...
Sorry. This is very good.
Can I just make a quick point here?
Yeah.
Just of something that was quite common at the time. The people of New Zealand, when the colonizers were referring to them, were Māori.
Yeah.
Everybody else was English or British. They didn't identify themselves with the country that they were in. They identified them by the empire they were part of and the country that they came from. So references in historical documents about New Zealanders, they're referring to Māori.
Yeah.
David, because he is not a history guy, does not know this.
Well, or he does. Again, sorry to be a clanging cymbal, or he does, and he's trying to twist it and hope enough people believe him. But this is very good, this part.
Us an English translation of a Māori text there, but of course we don't need the English translation of the Māori.
So you got that? So basically, English version first, Māori version written from the English version, and now David Seymour is giving you an English interpretation of the Māori version. But what we're about to hear is you don't need to interpret what the Māori version was, because the Māori version was written from the English one. So let's go see what the original English one said.
Text, because the Māori text was based on the original English text, right? So what does the English text of Article 2 of the treaty say?
Well, you've got it in front of you. Why don't you read it?
Well, I mean, so this comes to the heart of your argument,
that's
right?
not good.
So really we're looking to see whether or not the English text guaranteed all people in New Zealand, tino rangatiratanga, or just iwi and
you're
hapu.
going to read out that it says that they're going to protect the chieftainship of their lands.
I'll read it out, just because, I mean, you've given us an interpretation of the Māori text, but here's the English text upon which the Māori text was written. Her Majesty the Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and tribes of New Zealand and to the respective families and individuals thereof the full, exclusive and undisturbed possessions of their lands, estates, forests, fisheries and other properties which they may collectively or individually possess, so long as it is their wish. That's tino rangatiratanga for Māori, a specific carve-out for Māori, not for...
And guess what? Old Seymour's only comeback is, yeah, but aren't we supposed to use the Māori version? Not the English version. We're supposed to use the Māori version, whereas Jack's just showing him, I know. So in other words, you've now got David Seymour fighting to use the Māori version, which means two things. First is, okay, so let's get some Māori language experts to tell us, oh, you don't have any? Oh, okay. Well, then let's find out how that was written from the English version. So it's a very, very nice bit. So now he'll explain it again, and then we'll move on.
That's tino rangatiratanga for Māori, a specific carve-out for Māori, not for all New Zealanders.
No, I understand that's what it says, but equally everyone tells you you've got to use the Maori text because that's what the signature is understood.
Interpreting the Maori...
That's a bit woke, don't you think, Chewie? Well, Seymour's a bit woke. Using the Maori version, what? It's a bit woke.
Maori text, when the Maori text is based on the English text, shows that clearly it's a carve-out for Māori, not for everyone. That's what the treaty says.
It's a very cute argument, Jack, but just remember...
it's actually an argument based on the treaty, right? And whether or not your principles actually reflect what's in the treaty. And you say that the principles are for all New Zealanders, and clearly the treaty says this is for Māori.
No, your cute argument is that we must listen to the Maori text because it's the Maori text that it was signed, it's the Maori text that was that the British were the proposers of it, therefore it should be the Maori interpretation that is used, and then as soon as convenient you say, oh no, actually no, we'll go back to the English text.
Your cute argument is that the legal scholars have interpreted the Māori text as meaning one thing are wrong, even though the Māori text was based on an English text which very clearly shows that the carve-out was for Māori, not for all New Zealanders. Now,
boom. I mean like boom. I mean like boom, 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 boom. Go, Joe.
Again, just to really underline something, because Jack says there, not all New Zealanders. Again, when you're referring to documents from this time period, New Zealanders are exclusively Māori. So that's a really easy interpretation when it comes to this. That's who they were talking about.
Yeah, people who live in this country.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, David isn't a law guy. He's not a history guy. He thinks that this is a plus, and he thinks that is why everybody should have their say on a historical document that many will not have a grounding to understand. Like, just opening it up to everybody. Yes, sure, pure democracy. Call it that. Is it effective lawmaking? No, it's not. And we just really need to draw a point that David, earlier in this interview, where he is bricking it the entire time, comes down to the fact that he said we are the envy of the world for our race relations. Straight out of the gate, first couple of minutes, he destroys his own argument. It is spectacular.
Heidi might come back to me, because this last bit is just kind of a bit of fun. It's just 60 seconds. And don't we love it when we see David Seymour get pissy? Let's have a look, eh?
Is this worth doing if treaty settlements have to be renegotiated?
Well, I don't believe that they will be. All law exists in the context, all contracts exist in the context of the wider laws of New Zealand.
But that is the advice from the officials.
What's interesting about so much of this interview is how easily people question the idea that a parliament elected by the majority of New Zealanders shouldn't be able to make law.
Who have a vested interest in the document being changed. Remember, with one of the signatories. It's like your boss doing it. The boss is doing it.
Laws that are consistent with
the argument I made was that you, as a Minister of the Crown, arguably should not be defining the treaty principles, given the Crown is one of the concerned parties in the treaty, and that actually the courts are a much more appropriate place to define those treaty principles, because they are a neutral third-party arbiter. We're running out of time.
Except I'm not. Parliament is the democratically elected body of New Zealand, making the laws people need to live under.
And the executive is the representation of the Crown, as opposed to the courts.
Yeah, but
right.
But we're not.
Again,
it's the
conflict of interest.
the Parliament that would pass the treaty principles.
Do you reckon?
There you go. That's it. Little bit pissy. This is a new thing for David Seymour since leading up to the last election. And we've played it several times. And I know we played it several times because I can remember writing on some highlights every now and again, David Seymour getting pissy. They always get good views, so that's a good thing. So yeah, Chewy, we're going to move on to Debbie shortly, and we've got to do some super chats now. But you've got a chance. You want to respond to any of that?
Yeah, look, I just want to say, I watched this whole interview before we jumped on tonight. And sure, I was very close to having to go and buy a new TV. But the whole interview is well worth watching. A couple of my favorite bits of Jack bringing up just after that clip that you played, actually, that David admits that it means nothing if the iwi or the hapu have accepted a settlement. And the example that Jack makes is Kaitahu here in the South Island.
Having 90% control.
90% of control over the entire South Island. Can't do anything about that. So that brings into the point of how many iwi have settled their claims, right? Because there's not that many left. So this won't affect much either. Like, it just seems like a hiding to nowhere. And when anyone points it out, he goes, "Oh yes, but we might be South Africa. We're not South Africa."
So something else he said.
As I watched this is the thought that my wife had, and it is absolutely spot on. David Seymour wants to complete colonization.
Yeah, nice. Well, not
he
nice,
wants to underline it. Nice. Full stop. Job done. Mission accomplished. That's what this reframing is. We want to shut that fucking door. Colonized.
Good call. I'm not saying good, obviously, but it makes sense. This is something else he said, which I tweeted about, which we didn't show then. David Seymour says the version of the treaty that's been interpreted by the courts, etc., is, quote, completely unworkable in a liberal democratic state, end quote. But that's what New Zealand is. And it is working in a liberal. So he says this will never work. It's like this is like him in 1835 going, we could never do this, guys. It's not going to work. Fair enough. You can predict the future, but he's saying this is never going to work for something that's working. It's bizarre.
So earlier in that interview, his whole the thing that he was hanging his fucking hat on, that it was just going to unlock so much potential in this country, is that somebody wanting to do a subdivision or a real estate development, they have to reach out to tangata whenua to do a cultural report, and I guess see what's happened in the area, make sure that they're not fucking doing it on a battle site or
killing some native animals
or an urupa or that sort of thing. And I was just like, that's a good thing. It's a good thing, but apparently it's frustrating for developers. And this is why we have a housing problem, because Māori won't let us build subdivisions everywhere. It is that is the most honest thing he has said about this, that it is about property, which absolutely clicks in with everything to do with Atlas. It's everything to do with what they're doing. Whenever there's a colonized indigenous people trying to retain their rights over their land, there is Atlas trying to fuck it up.